10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 441. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 441 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. I can't believe we're getting to the end of the first month of 2025 already. This is our fourth episode of the year, and it will be the final one for the month. And we're going to finish up our series on learning bebop vocabulary through learning bebop melodies. Super, super important thing. So if you've been playing along for the entire month, you should already know 3 tunes that you may have not known before. And you will also have done some work on taking specific pieces, specific fragments of these bebop melodies and putting them through all 12 keys. And we're going to finish off by doing the exact same thing with one more tune. So we are going to go to rhythm changes, and we're going to go back to Charlie Parker, and we are going to, first of all, have you learn the melody to the legendary tune Anthropology. So we did ornithology, now we're doing anthropology. And this is truly, I think, one of the best bebop melodies ever written. Its structure, the fact that it's over rhythm changes, the rhythmic scheme, everything about this melody, I think just makes it basically essential learning. Not to mention, tons of people play this tune. So this is a really, really valuable one to know, have memorized, and be comfortable with. And it also just happens to have amazing vocabulary. So actually, we're going to do 2 pieces of vocabulary to leave off of the month. We're going to kind of up the ante a little bit. I'm hoping that if you spent the last 3 weeks, every week, maybe on a daily basis, working on a little bit of vocabulary and moving it through the keys, that actually that process has become quicker and easier and more familiar to you. So now we're going to give you 2 pieces of vocabulary because actually you should be able to move through them relatively more quickly, just simply from that 3 weeks of focusing on it. And that's actually one of the best things about working through all the keys and doing like a little bit of work on a regular basis by taking things through all 12 keys, is that actually the process of doing it, the thinking that your brain goes into when you're getting ready to put something in all 12 keys, that actually gets faster. So regardless of the piece of vocabulary, usually you can move more quickly. A lot of people never get out of that stage where it's really, really difficult and time consuming. And they never get to the other side of like, oh, I've simply just done this practice of putting things in 12 keys enough that the process is really no problem. Then you end up doing it a lot more because it just seems less daunting. All right. So first things first, go and put on your practice planner for this week. Learn the melody to Anthropology by ear. The whole thing, all right? If you need to slow it down to 50%, go for it. That's fine. I just want you to be able to get through it. And then your second step or thing that you're working on in tandem with that are these 2 pieces of vocabulary. So the first one is the opening line to this tune. Just that little tiny phrase. I love this phrase. Do you know how many bebop elements there are in this phrase alone? This little short thing. So it starts with an arpeggiation. 5, 1, 3. And then it does a little scale fragment back down to the root. And then it does one of the most classic bebop devices. It does an enclosure of the 3rd. And then it jumps up to the 5th. So it's really cool. We have like basically all of the elements of bebop. Wow, not all of the elements. I'm speaking too grandly right now. It has a bunch of really important elements of bebop in one tiny little phrase, outlining chords. Wow, that sounds like we're at the baseball game when I'm using that organ sound. But outlining those chords, right? Then using scale motion after you use chord motion. Contrasting wide intervals with narrow intervals. And then it has this really sophisticated use of chromaticism, which is that enclosure. And then sort of tags it at the end with another chordal movement. If you learn this in all 12 keys and you could really play it without thinking, you are going to end up using this all over the place. I pretty much guarantee it. So that's the first one. And then we'll just take that right around the circle of fourths. And so on and so forth. Okay, so the second one is the opening line of the bridge. And this one has some different elements in it. It's nice and short again, though. And let's talk about some of the elements that this one represents that I think would be really helpful for you. So it starts on the third of the chord, and it goes chromatically up to the fifth. Super important. That's a really, really useful bebop device, is connecting two chord tones together chromatically. And then we jump back down to the third, but this time we move in scale-wise motion. So that's just 3, 4, 5. And then we do a chordal shape down. So we get the chromaticism, we get the scale-wise motion, and we get the arpeggiation. Again, such a complete way to develop some bebop vocabulary in this teeny tiny little phrase. And again, we'll just move right around the circle of fourths with this one. And I think that'll be a really fantastic piece of vocabulary for you to know. And it will, again, just generally start coming out without you even realizing it, because it sounds so darn good. Okay. So those will be the two for this week. I'll give the Patreon members a little play along track and a little chord order so that you can look right around that circle of fourths and you can just test your ability by playing with the recording. And that's about it for this month. I hope that at the very, very, very least, even if you didn't get to the vocabulary, I hope at the very least you can walk away from this month's series knowing 4 songs that maybe you didn't know before. And to be quite honest with you, if you're short on time, you don't have a ton of time to practice, you got to get it in when you can. Just knowing 4 melodies, I don't even care if it takes you 3 months. You should consider that to be a huge, huge win. Okay? So don't take that lightly. And don't think that if you're not getting absolutely everything done, that you're like failing somehow. Okay? Anything that you walk away knowing, or any skill that you walk away with that you didn't have before, that is like a massive, massive win in my book. So anything that you got done this month, good job. I'm proud of you. And keep coming back, and we'll keep working on getting more and more of these skills under your belt so that your playing can grow by however much you have time for. Okay? So you heard me mention the Patreon. If you're new to the show, this is the way we support ourselves on the show. We don't do any ads. We're a listener-supported podcast. And we do that in the form of listeners just like you making a small monthly donation. And in return for that, you get all of the resources from every single episode to help you actually put this stuff into action. So if you want to support us, learn more, understand what you get, and get instant access to every single episode that we've ever done, you can go over to our Patreon, and you can find that by going to 10minutejazzlesson.com, clicking on one of the Patreon banners, or you can go to patreon.com, search for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. It'll give you all the info. You can get signed up, and then you can just have fun. digging around in there, finding something really, really useful to work on. I got lots of shout outs this week. It looks like people are ready to start taking this stuff seriously in 2025, and I'm really thrilled about that. So thank you to all of our new patrons, Deborah, Louise, Anya, Eddie, Judith, Bruce, Eric, and Reed. Thank you guys so much for joining up to be part of this thing. And of course, to the over 350 members we have over there supporting us, thank you. We really could not do this without you. So 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, or patreon.com, check out and search for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, and I'll see you over there. Okay, everybody. Hope you have a great weekend. We won't be here next week because it's the 5th Friday of the month. But we will be back in February with a brand new series. Talk to you soon. Bye.